Hello, as promised, I'm back with part 2 of how to remedy anxiety at home remedies for anxiety, holistic remedies for anxiety, things to try either in addition to the medication you're already on. I'm certainly not advising you to get off of it, but also things to try if maybe anxiety is becoming more and more a part of your life and you're at the stage where you're looking at, well, gosh, should I go see a doctor? Should I get on narcotic prescriptions? Should I, is it time to intervene? So I want to give you some tools to have in your toolbox so that you can try some new things. So yesterday, I'll review what we talked about yesterday. And by the way, I'm Audrey Christie with audreychristie.com. I'm a registered nurse, certified clinical master of aromatherapy, Reiki master, certified in homeopathics, and a whole bunch of other different things. Basically, I'm super passionate about you finding simple and practical ways to transform your life and use some of those holistic options out there. And I touched on some of this yesterday, but pharmaceutical companies are quickly going by the wayside of the tobacco industry or tobacco companies, where it's being found that they have pulled the fleece over our eyes and presented claims and medications that, and biased studies. And so we're as a society, we're shifting back to things like essential oils and supplementation and making sure our diet is full of whole, real foods rather than food-like substances. So I want you to bear that in mind when we're talking about this. A lot of times, a lot of the things that I recommend for clients and that I recommend for you guys are things that are found, in your pantry at home. And sometimes I had somebody say this yesterday, that like essential oils, for instance, are just a fad, or that what I call Zen body, which is a lot like paleo style of eating, is just a fad. And it's really not. It's a return to what works. And if you've heard my talk on essential oils for beginners, you know that if you take an essential oil, and I don't have one with me, but like wintergreen, for example, which has really great pain relieving and analgesic properties, what pharmaceutical companies try to do is mimic that the molecular formula of something like wintergreen or a plant they find in the rainforest, and then they patent it and then they make a profit from it, right? And so they use all sorts of different methods to get that passed and get that through, and then of course they have the FDA on their side. But anyways, that's a long talk, and I can get on my soapbox, so I'm gonna put that away. What we're gonna talk about today is anxiety. Anxiety, it's like the number one, I don't want to call it a mental disease, but the number one mental stressor, the number one thing that most people will suffer from at some point in their life, hi Cheyenne, is anxiety. And there's lots of things that you can do to help remedy that. Yesterday we talked about omega-3s, and I still have them on my desk because I didn't get around to putting them up. We talked about chamomile tea. We talked about vitamin D, getting out in the sunlight. We talked about movement, how that literally creates endorphins, which are a happiness hormone. We talked about, we talked about omega-3s, we talked about chamomile, we talked about movement, we talked about vitamin D. I think we talked about 6 things. We talked about lavender, we talked about rosemary. Oh, that's 6. Yay. Okay. So today we're going to touch on a few more. So along with omega-3, everyone should take magnesium supplementation. Magnesium is responsible for 300 plus chemical reactions that happen inside your body, and most people are severely deficient in it. And sometimes that's a result of not being able to absorb it correctly because your diet doesn't make magnesium bioavailable. And sometimes that's a result of just not consuming enough of it. Or maybe you're taking a supplement and it's not the right kind. So there's 2 kinds. You can either take the oral supplement or you can use the body spray. And I use a combination of both. And that helps, that promotes restful sleep, but it also brings down anxiety. So that's something to definitely try. And frankly, I use magnesium like Tylenol. So if I have a headache, magnesium. If I can't sleep, magnesium. In addition to the magnesium that I take every day. The second thing is meditation, and I'll include a link to my meditation guide for people who don't think they can meditate. It's not hard. It's not all ums, and there's lots of different kinds of meditation. So find a meditation method that works for you. And I often recommend that people start with a gratitude journal. So if you're not a journaler or you're not a meditator, the best thing for you to do to get started is to think of, at the end of your day, think of 3 things that you're super grateful for. And if you don't have anything to be thankful for that day, it may be just your breath. Because you have breath, that means you're alive, right? So that's something to be thankful for. And as you write it down, close your eyes and really feel that emotion, really feel that gratitude. And if you can start with 3 of those every day, that's a good baby step to get you started in meditation. Meditation, of course, helps bring down anxious energy. It takes you sort of out of your head and into your whole body. And sometimes you can use meditation to take you out of your body and into, sort of a different level of consciousness. But that's a talk for another day. The other thing is diet. So they're finding more and more that anxiety and that all sorts of other illnesses and diseases in the body are related to inflammation in the body. And so if you're consuming things that are inflammatory, then that can serve, just like in a child consuming too much sugar or too much food dye can cause hyperactivity. It's the same, hyperactivity or that hyper anxious feeling is the same for adults, and that can be controlled with an anti-inflammatory diet. You can download my free Zen Body diet, which gives you a whole list of do's and don'ts. Some stuff off the top of my head that works: bananas, just to include in your diet if you are a naturally anxiety-filled person. Bananas, grass-fed beef, chamomile, eggs, salmon, and if you notice, a lot of the things that I'm mentioning are high in magnesium and high in omega-3s. Leafy greens, yogurt, good quality yogurt, not Dannon, not Yoplait, like real yogurt, and 100% fat yogurt. Don't buy low-fat yogurt. Turmeric, avocados, dark chocolate, coconut oil, seaweed. To be honest, seaweed really does not taste good. Or if you have a seaweed product that tastes good, please post it below, because I don't have one and I can't. I like seaweed and sushi. Let's see, acai berries, blueberries, all of those things are things to include in your diet. And if you are following an anti-inflammatory diet, the Zen Body diet, paleo, primal, all of those things are pretty well, GAPS, naturally anti-inflammatory. Let's see what else. Oh, acupressure. Okay, so in acupuncture, that's where they use the needles, right? And that's like an ancient Chinese medicine. Well, there's something similar called acupressure, and it's sort of like acupuncture for the newbie, right? So because you're going to use fingers, you don't have to be as precise with where you hit energetic meridian points. So if you look on your hand where your 4th and 5th fingers converge, about right here, about midway, you can feel where the bones come together. Midway on your hand, there is a point there called the triple warmer meridian. And if you're having either an acute anxiety attack or just general anxiety, you can tap with 2 fingers. You don't have to tap hard. And you tap for at least a minute onto your left hand. I had to think there. I had to do one of these. Onto your left hand. And then if you continue to have that same anxiety problem, feel the same spot here. And then you tap on that side for a minute. You don't have to think anything special. Just focus on the tapping. Thanks for the likes. Okay, so that covers, so far we've talked about magnesium, meditation, what to eat, acupressure points, so that triple warmer meridian. So that's where, just to explain that a little bit, that's the home of the fight or flight response. And so the fight or flight response, even though back, millions of years ago, was designed so that when the saber-toothed tiger was chasing the caveman, he had the adrenaline and the ability to run away. For most people in modern society, stress and that fight or flight response is such a part of our everyday life, because everything is so, oh my gosh, what's next? Everything's so stressful. And so that releases that adrenaline. It also takes away from your ability to actually fight or flight when you're in danger. And it releases a whole cascade, they call it a hormone cascade, in your body of things like cortisol and glucose and glucogen that if you're not actually having to fight or flight, just causes fat storage and inflammation and other health problems. Let's see. So I talked about magnesium, meditation, diet, acupressure. So 2 more. So I'll talk about a few more essential oils that you can use. I didn't have a ton of them yesterday. Yesterday we talked about lavender and we talked about rosemary, and I don't have any rosemary on me. You can also do like a rosemary tea, and that would work well as well. And the way you use those is aromatically. And so that means you can put them on your body, but for anxiety purposes, it's the sensors in your nose that are gonna take that to your brain in about 30 seconds. Essential oils have a really short half-life, so you might have to reapply. And so you might be thinking, well, you know, that kind of sucks. But it actually doesn't suck, because if you are using the essential oil, that short half-life also means that it doesn't stay with you long. So it takes care of the problem, it goes out of your body, and it doesn't leave any damage or residuals like traditional pharmaceuticals. You can also use peace and calming. I diffuse that in my kids' room about every night. And if I want to, so for instance, last night I didn't diffuse anything in my room, but I did use lavender, and I just put a drop right here on my chest so that really only I could smell it. So it didn't affect my husband, who was laying next to me and didn't really want to smell like lavender or smell lavender. Other things that are great for anxiety are the citrus oils. So lemon, citrus fresh, orange. And then of course, so that's essential oils, which we touched on yesterday. You can also use essential oils and a grounding technique. And it's kind of there's 2 types of grounding. There's energetic grounding, and then there's physical grounding. And so physical grounding is also energetic grounding, but energetic grounding is not physical grounding. Make sense? Sort of? Okay. So in order to physically ground, you can use bare feet on soil. So at my house, I have wood floors, and my floors are actually grounded, except for the tile and the carpet. But most of the house is wood. You can also go outside, put your bare feet on wet concrete in the grass. If you can't get your feet on concrete or grass, you can actually touch or lean against, actually hug a tree. In Texas, you gotta watch out for ants though. But you can just put the palm of your hand on a tree, and that's grounding. So you sit outside, you take big deep breaths in and out. And remember, we talked about yesterday, vitamin D, movement, getting outside, all of those things help relieve and bring down anxiety. Physical movement burns up that anxious energy. Also, energetic grounding. So that's sort of like a meditation visualization, where you actually visualize a cord coming from your tailbone and going down into the earth. And so you close your eyes, you breathe deep, and visualize that cord, and it just brings a sense of calming. And then you can use other physical methods of grounding, like crystals. So hematite, and this is a tiny one. My giant hematite walked away, which probably means it's in a child's room. But hematite is a good one for grounding. You can stick it in your pocket if you're feeling anxious all day. Essential oils are also great for grounding, like yang, and I always mess that up. So that one. Frankincense is also very grounding. So those are some tools you can use to physically ground. Oh, and chocolate. Everybody loves chocolate. Dark chocolate is also grounding if you're looking for grounding foods. And then finally, I'll touch on, since I talked about hematite for grounding, I'll touch on some other crystals that are great for anxiety. Rose quartz, and this is a raw piece of rose quartz. All of my tumbled rose quartz is in use in another spot right now. And it's kind of dirty. I just got it real cheap from our local rock shop. Tiger eye, also very grounding. Again, you can carry it with you. You can stick it in your bra. Be careful, it might fall out. You can put it in your pocket. I've heard people talk about mojo bags, where they'll put a combination of crystals and then stick it in their pocket or their purse and carry it on their person. Green aventurine, cool. And then finally hematite, as I talked about last time. So far in your anti-anxiety tool bag, you have vitamin D, omega-3s, a whole host of essential oils to use, right? A whole host of crystals to use, right? You also have magnesium, you have meditation, you have dietary changes, you have acupressure points, you have physical movement and grounding. So that's a lot of different tricks and tips and things that you can use. And so one thing isn't like the blanket that like it's going to work for everybody. So choose what resonates for you, leave behind what doesn't, figure out what works. If you have any questions, I'm always here. You're free to post in the comments below. I always come back and check them. Share this video if you have somebody in your life that has anxiety and it would help. And I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, tomorrow, it's a toss-up. I'm either going to talk about natural alternatives to cannabis oil and how it helps for those of us in Texas where shit ain't legal. And or I'll talk about homeopathics, because I've had a lot of questions about what are they, how do they work, how can I get my hands on some, what can I use them for. So, toodles, I hope everyone has a fantastic Tuesday. Bye.